I have always been fascinated with lightning. Just the primal power and the unpredictability of it. It's also beautiful, I think. Well, when I was about 16, my family lived on 7 rural acres in upstate New York. And our century-old farmhouse nestled at the bottom of a gentle hill, with a huge metal-sided barn up on top of the hill. I see that some of you can guess where this might be going. I heard thunder approaching from the west, up beyond the hill, and I just felt powerfully drawn to go up there and watch the storm roll in. So I grabbed an umbrella, and hey, I was a teenager. And I ran up the hill to stand just outside the barn, where the land kind of flattened out again, and I could watch the dark clouds approach. And there was lightning in the distance, and the whole atmosphere felt kind of electrified, just alive with anticipation. It was really exciting. Have you felt that just before a storm? Yeah. So I saw one good strike about a mile away up near the dirt road that we called Lover's Lane. But it was a small strike and too far to see really well. But then the rain started in earnest, pummeling the metal barn roof like 100 drummers playing fast and random right next to me. And by this time, my siblings had caught up, but they stayed wisely back on the driveway just below the crest of the hill. And they screamed over the din to get back in the house. Did I want to be struck by lightning or something? And I yelled back, it's not even here yet, just another minute or two. And as I spoke that last word, there was a loud electrical kind of crackling sound inside the corner of the barn where the power panel is, the electrical panel. Loud enough to hear over the rain that was pounding down on the roof. Well, that scared me. And so reluctantly, with a lot of backward looks over my shoulder, I went back to the house, and the storm rolled harmlessly over us. Now, it wasn't until about 20 years later that I got my wish and experienced lightning close by. And that time, I was leading a wilderness hike for teenagers in the Lewis Fork Wilderness of Western Virginia. We were camped in a spot that we called Dead Pony Ridge because there was a skeleton of a wild pony nearby. And there's not much to the story, actually. I was collecting firewood near our campsite. There was no warning, no rain, no distant thunder, just a little bit of a cool breeze that suggested we probably should collect firewood before the rain comes, because maybe it feels like rain. And lightning struck a tree less than 100 feet away from me, with a flash and a bang were simultaneous and God-smackingly bright and loud. My ears rang, my eyes clenched shut, and I was momentarily deaf, blind, and stunned. And then came the exhilaration. The whoops and the hollers and the, did you feel that? Everyone was filled with an overwhelming feeling of triumph, of excitement, and some feeling that's kind of hard to describe. Well, what I felt that day was awe. Awe is an emotion, it's an experience, a feeling. And until recently, researchers who study emotions and feelings haven't known much about it. I don't know if it's because they ran out of other emotions to study or if just no one thought about awe before this, but the last 25 years in psychology research have seen a flurry of experimental studies of awe, and the results are, predictably, awesome. Researchers define awe as, quote, an emotional response to perceptually vast stimuli that overwhelm current mental structures, yet facilitate attempts at accommodation. In other words, awe takes us outside our everyday lives and challenges our conceptions of reality, the way we think about the world and our place in it. And it leaves us in a state of wonder as we try to make sense of all that. Awe happens when we perceive something vast, and vastness can be physical, like the Grand Canyon or distant galaxies, or the overwhelming light and sound of a lightning strike. But vastness can also be metaphorical or conceptual, as in an expansive idea with vast implications, like Einstein's theory of relativity. And there's another kind of vastness that we might not normally think of. This woman has cancer, and to prepare for chemotherapy, she asked a barber to shave her head, and she's obviously pretty distraught. And to his credit, he really gets the gravity of what he's been asked to do for her. Watch what he does. Vastness can also, might need some Kleenex up here, maybe out there too. Vastness can also be social, like seeing someone perform an act of great altruism with vast implications for how we think about our fellow humans. Vastness can also be embodied in the complexity of something, like this schematic of human metabolism. Awe can be invoked by grand vistas, powerful music, intense meditation, fast or slow motion videos, powerful people, intricate artwork. Just kidding, here's something. It can also be religious epiphanies, even impressive buildings. Although studies show that nature and natural settings are by far the most common sources of awe. And when we feel awe, several things happen inside us. We feel small and insignificant, suddenly aware that we are in the presence of something far greater than ourselves. And researchers call this experience the small self. And it's related to that perceived vastness of the event that we're experiencing or witnessing. At the same time, two different parts of our brain change their activity, the parietal lobe and the central executive network. And just relax, those terms will not be on the test. Just listen. The parietal lobe normally orients us and anchors us inside our skins. It's aware of our body's edges and boundaries. During awe, the parietal lobe kind of tamps down its activity, dissolving the perceived boundaries between ourselves and our surroundings. It makes us feel more connected, more a part of our environment. And in extreme awe, many people report an all-encompassing oneness with the entire universe. At the same time, the central executive network increases its activity, and this brain system is involved in what we pay attention to. So awe centers us in the moment, immersing us in the experience. In other words, the ego takes a break. We can't be self-conscious while we're experiencing awe. David Yaden at Johns Hopkins described 6 core characteristics of awe experiences, and we've discussed the first 3 already. And to illustrate this one, I want to show you a short video of the turning Earth. Just watch. Now, pay attention to what's happening. When we are in awe, Our jaw drops, our mouth gapes open, eyebrows raise, eyes widen, our heart rate changes, respiration changes. We may have goosebumps or chills. Interestingly, any inflammation that's happening in your body decreases when you're in awe. So awe is the original anti-inflammatory medicine. Our nervous system shifts from fight or flight towards rest and digest. We feel happier and our lives feel more meaningful. But because our ego, our self-consciousness is offline at the time, we usually can't articulate those things in the moment. We just feel amazed. And related to this is the strange effect of awe on our sense of time. During and after an awe experience, we are less impatient. We're more likely to feel that there's enough time, and we're more generous with our time. Okay, so what's this need for accommodation? Experiences that invoke awe in us challenge our worldview in some way. They violate our expectations. And when an experience challenges our previous ideas about how the world works, especially if it challenges our place in the world, we feel off kilter and our brains try to fix it, to get back to something that feels more like settled certainty. And this striving, this need to get back to understanding is what the researchers mean when they say need for accommodation. And usually we accommodate by either rejecting the experience or revising our expectations, adjusting our mental constructs of the world and how it works. So this need for accommodation is where awe gets really interesting for the relationship between science and religion. Awe is central to the formation and maintenance of religions. Theologian Frederick Buechner said, quote, "Religions start with a lump in the throat, or with the bush going up in flames, the rain of flowers, the dove coming down out of the sky," end quote. Well, I certainly felt the lump in the throat with that barber video earlier. Awe taps into the deepest parts of us and our relationship with reality and changes us there in ways that feel religious or spiritual. There's a reason religious buildings are so vast and so beautiful. They're designed to invoke awe, to make us feel small, but also feel deeply connected with each other and with a higher power. And that need for accommodation, especially when the awe experience is mysterious in some way or hard to explain, it leads many people to assign supernatural causes to the event. So religion and awe can feed one another. And people actually study this stuff scientifically. And what they find is that humans are uncomfortable with the idea of randomness. Even when the world is random, we tend to assume that some agent, some author is behind what we perceive. For example, given random strings of numbers, college students who had just experienced awe were more likely to say that those numbers were arranged by some person. And for most people, this translates to stronger belief in religious deities. So a need for accommodation is closely tied with religious belief in people generally. A few years ago, after presenting my 7 Candles talk, which is designed to make audiences feel awe from science and from nature, a man came up to me and he said, "JD, that was the most convincing proof of God I've ever experienced." And the woman right behind him in line, when it was her turn, said, "JD, that was the most comprehensive talk I've ever heard on why there's no need for God." They each experienced the same presentation, but he accommodated his awe by invoking God, and she accommodated using natural laws. These are both reasonable and valid, and it's natural for us to do this because we crave explanations. So much so that most of us tend toward quick accommodation without investigation. It's basically jumping to conclusions, and we all do it. I'll say more about that in Atheism Part 2, but for now, let me point out that experiences of awe can lead to different responses in us. We can dismiss the experience. We can assume that human or mystical agents are causing it, or we can get curious, living in that uncomfortable space of not knowing. And that last option requires flexible mental frameworks that can accommodate ambiguity and mystery, at least for a while. As I said before, the most common setting where people feel awe is in nature. And my close calls with lightning are prime examples of this. Now, just to be clear, when I say nature, you might be thinking of forests and bunny rabbits, but nature is also rocks and viruses and other planets and the electricity in this microphone. And it's also happenings like the ball leaving Caitlin Clark's hand on its way to her record-breaking three-point swish. Nature is everything that science can explore and describe. When I say nature, I mean physical reality. When I take to heart what science reveals about physical reality, I often experience awe. Here's an example from just this past February. I came across it was just out then, a genetic study that revealed that our complex nervous systems are only possible because we have genes from a retrovirus that infected a fish ancestor of ours millions of years ago. Those genes allowed for the myelin insulation sheath on all of our nerve cells. Brains couldn't work without that insulation. It turns out that a full 40% of mammal genes contain bits of DNA provided by viruses that infected our deep ancestors. So I read studies like that, and my jaw drops, my eyebrows go up, and I say, wow. And often I say it out loud, which makes Anne come over to see, what's going on. And when this happens, all the characteristics of awe are in play for me, because studies like that, new revelations about nature, especially if they pertain to my place in it, they open up vast new understandings about myself and my ancestry. And they violate my expectations about illness and suffering and the mysterious ways of the world. It's tempting to conclude that science is awesome, but it's nature that's awesome. Science just reveals nature's awesomeness in ever greater, more awe-inspiring detail. If religions are founded on and maintained by awe, what should we call people whose spirituality is based on experiences of awe? Well, I wish I had coined that term atheist, but I am one of the first people to take it seriously. I like it, and I kind of hope it catches on. Atheists can live on any part of the spectrum of believers and non-believers, but most of the people I think of as atheists don't spend a whole lot of time talking about whether God exists or not. They're too busy being wowed by what's right here for the enjoyment and wonder of everyone. Awe is a significant source of spirituality for me personally. Nature and the science that reveals it keep providing me with new opportunities to feel awe and to become a better person as a result of that. There's so much to share about awe as a source of spiritual enrichment that this service this morning is only part one of a three-part series. And in preparing this sermon, I learned that Siri, Alexa, and other speech-to-text systems don't seem to know about the word awe. Instead, typing all every time I say awe. So, it's a good thing this isn't a sermon about leather tricks. I should probably finish my story about the lightning strike up there on Dead Pony Ridge. While we were all still bubbling from the thrill of the strike, the whole group went to look for the tree that got struck. It was a tall pine, and there was a strip of bark missing, stripped off in a spiral from the top of the tree down to the base. Tattered remnants of bark littered the ground and hung from nearby branches like shrapnel or something. And we were pretty sure this was going to kill the tree eventually, but the sight of it is burned into my memory. Vast power indeed. It's no wonder our ancestors assigned lightning to the most powerful gods. It's the same power that burns in our chalice and in ourselves, the same power that struck the universe into being at the beginning of time, and that carries starlight to us across deep time and deep space. Speaking of which, in 2004, the Hubble Space Telescope took the first of many photographs called deep field images. They chose a tiny little square of sky in between all the known stars, about the size of a grain of sand held out at the end of your arm. What do you see when, for sheer curiosity, you zoom in on nothing but a tiny square of black space between the stars? Well, you see over 10,000 galaxies, each one averaging 400 billion stars. And subsequent deep field images like this confirm that this happens in every direction we point our telescopes. And it's how we know there are as many as 2 trillion galaxies in the visible universe. Later, someone calculated the distance for each of those galaxies and made this 3D fly-through. Small, made it a little more playful, perhaps even a little more generous. May it always be so. Blessed be and amen.